Welcome to my YouTube channel. On this channel, we find facts and fine-tune figures.
What if I tell you you can create Medallion architecture in less than 1 minute? Hi guys, welcome to another episode of Fabric with Francis. Today we are going to be talking about Fabric CLI. What is Fabric CLI and why is Fabric CLI important to you? At the end of this video, you are going to understand what Fabric CLI is and why you should care about Fabric CLI. CLI simply means command line interface as against graphical user interface. Imagine you have your PC, you need to move files from one folder to another. What do? You click on the folder, you move the file from a particular place to another destination by clicking through your screen. That is GUI. But CLI is actually an interface that allows you to use certain commands to actually perform all these operations, and this becomes important when you are trying to automate certain processes. So that is what CLI is. Now, Fabric CLI. Fabric CLI are sets of commands that have actually been documented that you can use to manipulate and work around Microsoft Fabric. There is actually a documentation around this. So let's go into my laptop and see what Fabric CLI is, how we can use it, and how we are going to actually use it in this video to create Medallion architecture. Here is the documentation to Fabric CLI. I'm going to drop the link to this documentation in this video. Now, Fabric CLI can be used to explore, automate, and also script your Fabric environment right from the terminal. To use Fabric CLI, there are some certain prerequisites that needs to be met. First off, you need to have a Python installed on your local machine from Python 3.10 and above, and also make sure that the path environment variable is also installed. And lastly, you need to ensure that Fabric CLI is also installed in your machine. So you can use it on either Windows terminal, OS terminal, or even on Linux shell. You can also authenticate on various methods. Either you are using your user interface or you are using your service principal or manage identity. So these are some of the ways in which you can actually authenticate Microsoft Fabric. Remember, what we are trying to do today is to create a Medallion architecture using Fabric CLI. So if I go into my Fabric portal to actually create my Medallion architecture, typically what I will do is to click on workspaces and actually click on a new workspace, and then I continue to click until I'm done creating my Medallion architecture. But today we are going to be using Fabric CLI to do that, such that you can actually use that script in your work. So imagine you are a data consultant and you are going to be creating Medallion architecture for so many organizations. You don't want to start clicking every time. If you have a CLI script prepared for you, you can actually run it on multiple client environments to create Medallion architecture. So that is the whole point of using Fabric CLI. In case you don't know what Medallion architecture is, you can check my previous video to actually find out more about Medallion architecture. So let's go back into our documentation. Here is the documentation, and then also we can now go into command. So this is the command tab. There are a number of commands. So commands, like I said, are a set of instructions that you use to interact with Microsoft Fabric. Now this is the structure of the command which can be copied. It comes with the keyword fab, which is the short form for fabric, and then the command group itself, which is the group of related commands like fs, table, etc. Then you have the command itself, which specifies the operation to perform, and then you have arguments, which are positional values needed by that command, and also the parameter. So this is a simple structure of a command, and these are some of the commands that you have. You have this, which is to assign resource to a particular workspace. You have export, you have exist, you have get, import, and so many commands that you can use and combine together. So let's start simply and use one of these commands in our Fabric environment. So let's use export. Now, to use export, it can be used to export all workspace items that support the definition for the export, either your notebook, your report, your real-time item. And this is how to use it. You have the Fabric keyword first, then the command export, then the path, which is where what you are trying to export is located, and then the output part where you want to export the item into. And of course, the parameters, you have the flag as well, -a, which is to export all items, is also an optional item. And then you have -f, which is to force export without any confirmation. Now, to run this command, you need to have your PowerShell Windows installed. Either you have the Windows shell or you have PowerShell 7, which is my preference. I have PowerShell, then you have Windows shell that comes by default with every Windows machine. So you can install either of them. My preference is PowerShell. So I'll open up my PowerShell, and then once I have it opened, then this is where I'm going to be running this command. So for example, we can see this example usage here. So the fabric keyword, the export keyword, and then the name of the workspace from which I want to export from, then the name of the notebook I want to export if I'm exporting a notebook item, and then the part in my local machine where I want to export it to. So I'm going to copy this now, and then I'm going to open my notepad so that we can use that to construct the command we are going to be running to export fabric item. So I'll come right here and open a new one, then I'll paste what I just copied. Now I'm going to go back into my fabric environment, and then I'll pick a particular workspace that I know that I have fabric item, and then let's say we want to export this. Now this command looks simple, but imagine a situation whereby you've actually done a lot of work in a particular workspace, and then you need to move everything in your workspace into another workspace. That's one use case for export. So let's just do a simple export of a notebook in this workspace. So I'm going to click on this, and then I will get the name, the exact name of the item I'm trying to export. So let's just wait briefly for this to come up. I'll click on settings, and then I'll copy the exact name of this notebook. So once I have it copied, then I take that into my notepad. So I'll replace the name of the notebook right here. Now, if I want to export another item, let's say a data activator, instead of notebook here, I will type activator. If I want to export a pipeline or any item, I will make sure that what I have here, the keyword is going to be the item I want to export, whatever the item is. So in our case now, since we are exporting a notebook, so we leave it as a notebook. But since I will now replace this with the actual name of the notebook I want to export, then the workspace as well. So let me go back into my fabric environment and pick the name of the workspace. So here is the workspace name. So I'll copy the exact workspace name also and take that into my notepad and also replace that with the actual name of the workspace. So, but we are still not done. Now we need to specify the part in which we want to export to. I have created a folder in my desktop. So here is the folder Fabric CLI. So let's check this folder now. This folder currently does not have that notebook we are trying to export, has just two files which I'm going to come back later. So on my desktop now, I'm just going to copy the parts of this folder to specify the part in which I'm going to export to. So I'll copy the part, then go back into my notepad where I'm constructing my command, then I will replace that part right here. But then the usage example does not include the double quote, so I will remove the double quote right here. So now this command is complete, and I can now use it to actually export an item from my fabric environment. So I'll open up my PowerShell. So once you have it open, first thing first typically is that you are going to sign in. So to sign in, the command is simple. You just type fab. Now I have some auto completion here because I've used them before. So, but in your case now, you can just type 5 auth login, then I can click enter. So the auto completion I'm seeing here is from work I've done before. So I will click enter, and then it gives me a number of options that I can use to actually log into my Fabric environment. So I have the web browser authentication method, the service principal method, or the manage identity, which I can actually use my arrow key on my keyboard to actually navigate, and then you see them highlighted in this almost green color. So I'm using my web, then I'll click on enter. So once I click on enter, then it opens up my browser, and then I select the account I want to use for this. So I select this, then I click on continue, and then my login will be completed. So once my login is complete, then I can run the CLI script that we have constructed to actually export this notebook. So again, let's check this folder. You see that we don't have this notebook currently open in this folder. So I'll go back into my PowerShell script. Now I am logged in, and then I'll copy this. So once I have it copied, then I'll go back right here, and then I'll paste the command, then I'll hit enter on my keyboard, and then give it a few seconds, and this notebook is going to be exported for me. So it's asking me if I want to actually export it without sensitivity label. So I will just type a big yes, capital Y, and then I'll hit enter on my keyboard and expect that this item is exported. Now it is telling us that export is now complete and export has been created. So let's check the folder we are working with and see if we can find it. Here it is. You have a folder with the exact name of the item that was exported. So if I open this folder now, I'm going to see two items: platform, which is the metadata of the item that was exported, and also the notebook. So let's open this notebook and see if it is actually exported. Here is the notebook that was exported with Fabric CLI. So let's go back into our documentation and see other things that are possible with Fabric CLI. Let's check the usage example. Now, under usage example, there are various categories. We have the one for authentication and configuration, those for core management, tenant management, workspace management, and also item management. A lot of this usage example can actually be combined logically to actually do scripting with Fabric CLI. Now let's check under tenant management and check capacity example. Right here, you can see that you can navigate your capacity with this command. You can also create your capacity where you have the capacity admin, you have a capacity location also defined. And there are so many things that you can also do. You can get the list of all the capacities in your tenant. You can update your capacity as well. So also under workspace item, we have workspace examples. You can actually navigate your workspace. You can create a workspace itself using this command fab create. Then in this case, ws will be replace the name of the workspace you are trying to create, and also you can get the workspace details as well. So these are some of the examples of the commands and usage that you can make Fabric CLI do for you. So today now we are going to be using these commands to actually create a Medallion architecture. If you don't know what Medallion architecture is, check one of my previous videos where I talk about Medallion architecture. And to create Medallion architecture in this case, if you are going to be using your Fabric portal, you have to go in there and click on new workspace. So once you click on new workspace, then you have to create the lake houses for your layers of Medallion architecture, the bronze, the silver, and also the gold layer. But we don't want to do that. We want to automate this process such that if I'm working for client A that need this type of Medallion architecture, tomorrow if I need to work for client B, I can also create the exact same thing for multiple clients. This way I'm able to save time and gain speed, and there is also consistency in my work. So now I will go back into my working folder. In my working folder, I have two items, so I won't waste our time in this video. So the first item is the actual PowerShell script that contains all the Fabric commands that will be used to create the Medallion architecture. And if I go back to that folder, you will notice that this is the um, PowerShell file, and also I have the batch file. So now if I go back into it, this is the documentation on how to use it. So all I have to do is just to use this example and run it in my PowerShell window, which is a .ps1 file. So now I can just type this into my PowerShell, and then it's going to create the Medallion architecture for me. Or I can use it this way and define the name of the workspace, or I can use it this way where I define the name of the workspace and also define the name of the capacity, if you know the name of the capacity as well. So this script is just a combination of all the CLI commands that I show us earlier to actually create a Medallion architecture. So by the time I'm done in this script, it's going to create a new workspace for me. It's going to create 3 lakehouses, one for each layer of the Medallion architecture. Now, in my working file, there are 2 items in there. I have the PowerShell script that contains the actual Fabric CLI script, and also I have the batch file. The batch file is going to be calling the PowerShell script itself. So let me just open up this batch file. I will just right click on it, and then I will click on edit window, and then it opens it up for me in my notepad. So now this is the bat file. The bat file is actually calling this script. Why is this important? This is important because first of all, one of the requirements is that you need to have your Fabric CLI installed. And of course, if you have your Fabric CLI installed, it then means that you already have your Python installed on your machine. And also, this line is very important. You can see that it is calling the PowerShell script. What this does is that it bypasses the execution policy. Maybe you have some security in place in your computer. So once you have this bypass executed, then it's going to run the script in the PowerShell script itself. So now let me go back into my PowerShell environment. Now I have some things in here already, so I can just type clear so that I have a brand new PowerShell script, and then is now empty. So I'll go back into the working directory now, and then I'll just click on desktop, and I'll copy the parts of this folder where I have those 2 files, the PowerShell file and also the bat file. So I'll copy as parts. So once I have that copy, then I go back in here. Then I'm going to type cd, which is a command to change directory, and then I will paste I will type space, and then I will paste the part in here. Now, this is important. You don't need the double quote, so I will remove the double quote from here. So this is to point your PowerShell into the part where those files are located. Then I'll hit on enter. Remember, we've signed in before by using the Fab Authenticate. Now, instead of typing all the commands manually, first to create a workspace, second to create lakehouse 1 up to lakehouse 3, which is the gold layer of the Medallion architecture, I won't have to do that manually, but rather I will just type dots the bat file, because I've done this before. Then I will do a forward slash. Is this back forward or backward slash? I'm not sure. So dot the backward slash, and then type the name of the bat file. Remember, the bat file is going to call the PowerShell file, but the bat file is important to confirm that the Fabric CLI is already installed on this machine and also bypass that execution policy. Then I will hit enter. So now you see that the Fabric CLI is being installed. So if you have it installed already, you just have an information saying the requirement is already satisfied. Otherwise, it's just going to install Fabric CLI afresh in your local machine. So let's just wait for this script to be run. And then once it's done running, then we can continue. Now my PowerShell script is running. So this is a deployment of Medallion architecture using Fabric CLI. Then step 1 is validating the CLI to be sure that the CLI that is being installed, and then it proceed, and in less than a minute, then you are done creating your Fabric Medallion architecture. Now, what step 2 is doing is that is checking the Fabric capacity to be sure that you have capacities available to create your workspace. So the way I've done the script is such that is going to check the list of all the workspaces. Remember, if you go back to our documentation, you will see that you have capacity usage examples. For example, you can see capacity example right here. And then if you scroll down, you will see where you have all your capacity listed, right? So this is going to show us where you have all your capacity listed, for example. So that command is part of that script that is running. And then after you list your capacity, you then want to select the capacity. Yeah, this is the command I was looking for, list all the capacity. So this command is actually part of that script of the PowerShell script. So if you run this command, typically it will give you the list of all the capacities. Now you need to associate this capacity to the workspace you are creating. So let's go back into our Windows. That is the command that I just ran for step 2. So now it has listed all the capacity that I have in my tenant. 0. Now the way I did the script is such that you can pick the capacity you want to use to create your Medallion architecture. You have 0 and then you also have 1. So if you have multiple capacities in your environment, all those capacities will be listed, and then you can just type the number you have in front of that capacity to select the capacity you are using to create your Medallion architecture. So in my case now, I have just a trial capacity, which is this SKU, and the state is active. So I will just type 1, and then once I type 1, it's going to continue running this script. So first off, I'm selecting the capacity to use, and then after I select this capacity now, the workspace is going to create it. But before I continue, let me go back into my Fabric environment and explain certain things to you. Now, these are all the workspaces I have, and then the name of the workspace I want to create, like I was trying to explain in the notepad, can actually be adjusted here. Either you add code it here and define the name of the workspace. This is the name of the workspace I'm creating, the Medallion architecture workspace. Or this is an example where you define the name of the workspace together with the command that you run in your PowerShell. But in my case, I'm just going to run, I'm already running it without defining the name. So it's going to pick this hard-coded name as the name of my workspace. So let's check if we have this workspace existing. So I will just type Medallion architecture right here and see if I have anything like that. So I have a Medallion workspace, but that is not it. The workspace that is defined in this script is actually Medallion architecture. So by the time the script is done running, then I should have a workspace called Medallion architecture. So I'll go back to my command line now, and then I'll hit enter. Now I'll use 1 to select the capacity I'm using. Then I'll click on enter, and then this notebook will continue to run. So it's checking if the workspace exists, Medallion architecture. Now, the way I did this script is such that it is idempotent. What idempotent means is that it's going to continue, it's going to check first if the name of the workspace exists. If it exists, then it cancels. But if it doesn't, then the script will continue to run. So now it's creating the workspace Medallion architecture on top of this capacity, which is step 4. Now that will create the workspace for us. So now let's just wait for this script to be done running and see what we have in our Fabric environment. So the workspace has been created. Now it is continuing to create the lakehouses. Before this script is going, before this script is done running, let's just go into our Fabric environment and see if this workspace is now here. So I'm just going to reload this page, and then I'll search for Medallion architecture. So now I'll just click on workspaces, and I'll search for Medallion. Now this is the workspace that has been created for me. So let me open this workspace and see what is created so far. So this is the workspace with nothing. So the script is still running. So let me go back into the script and see where we are. This is the script. Now it is creating the first lake house, which is the lake house. I have called the name of the lake house LH Bronze. Now this lake house has been created. Then it's going to proceed and continue to create another lake house, which is going to be LH Silver. And finally, we have your LH Gold. So let me just go back into my web browser, and then I'll reload the page and see if the lake house is genuinely created. Boom, and you can see that the lake house has been created without doing any click offs. So I'm going to select this lake house and see what is there. So not only that lake house is being created, I also included how to create folder paths as part of the script that is running currently. So that way I'm able to see the folder path that is created for me as well. So let me check now. The script is still running, so it's creating and setting up the folder path for raw and every other part that is defined. So let's just wait for this script to complete run, and then we'll check back to see if the workspace and all the lakehouses are now completed. So now the lakehouse is opening up, and then you can see the folder raw. So I can go back to the workspace now, my Medallion architecture, and see other lakehouses to be created. Now we have been able to create the first lake house. Now, if I want to create another Medallion architecture in another client environment, all I have to do is just to come into my PowerShell environment, authenticate, and just type this, and all of this action is going to be performed in my environment, and I have a full Medallion architecture. So once this script is done running, we'll check back and see if the three lake houses are created. I'm going to be dropping this script for us in this video so that we can also demonstrate it and replicate in our own environment. It's done running, and then our deployment is now complete. So in this deployment now, three lake houses are created with three subfolders, created a raw, landing, and archive folder. The same thing for silver lake house and also the gold lake house. Let me go back into my Fabric environment and reload this page and see these three lake houses. So I've reloaded now, so I expect to see the other two lake houses, the silver and also the gold layer of the lake of the Medallion architecture. So now I have three lake houses. So let's confirm if the folders are created as well. So let me open one of the lake houses to see if the folder system is also created together with this lake house. So now you can see the file area where I have three subfolders also created. So in each of the Medallion architecture layer, you have the lake house itself and also the file area where you have three stages created. Now, this is how to actually create Medallion architecture with Fabric CLI. So already we have a workspace called this Medallion architecture. Now, I'm going to run this script again and see if it's still going to work. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to clear up this, and then so that it's not messy. If I type clear, it's going to clear this up for me. And then I will just type dots, and then it auto completes what we have created. Remember, this Medallion architecture has already been created, but let's say you by chance running the second time with the exact same item names, and let's see what is going to happen. Ordinarily, the script is supposed to fail, but what I have done is that I made it independent such that it just keep and go to the next action if the item is already existing, which is another Fabric command that I showed us earlier. So I'll hit enter, and then it's going to check again and install the Fabric CLI and then run the entire script. So let's see how this is going to behave now that we already have the lake house created. Step one, validating the prerequisites, and then it's going to take all the steps all the way down to where the folders and the lake houses are created in that capacity. So now we are in step two, trying to retrieve the capacity. There's a command to retrieve all the capacity you have in your environment, and then I get to select the capacity which I want to use. So I'm going to select one to pick the capacity. So the capacity has been selected. So it's checking if this medallion, if this lake Medallion architecture exists. So, and if it exists, then it will skip and move to the next item. So it's saying that this workspace already exists. So it's not going to create another workspace again. So the same thing is going to happen for all of the items in this workspace, because the workspace have the exact name, the folders, the lake houses have the exact same name. So instead of creating and duplicating or your script running into error, it's rather going to just skip, and then you don't have any issue to worry about. So after this is done running, we are going to actually execute this script again with one of these example usage where you define the name of the workspace you want to use. So I'll copy this and then I will use it in my environment to actually create a Medallion architecture and create the name of the workspace as part of my initial command. Now, let us create Medallion architecture with the name of the workspace predefined. I had shown us the example earlier of how to use that. So let me just show us briefly what it looked like. So this is the documentation that I showed us earlier. So if I copy this now and then I go into my PowerShell environment and I try to run this, I don't expect this to run because the execution policy was wrapped in the batch file. But if you try to run this directly, then that security system is going to flag this. So let's go back into your notepad and then change the name of the new workspace of our Medallion architecture. Let's call it my Medallion architecture, just to have a different workspace name. So let's check in our Fabric portal and see if that is already existing. So I'll check workspaces, and then once I click on workspaces, then let me search for the keyword Medallion, and then we'll see. So this is the one that we created earlier, but the one that says my Medallion architecture workspace is not existing yet. So what I'm going to do now is that I'm going to execute that in my PowerShell script. So let me just delete this and copy the one I'm going to be using with the new name of the workspace to use. So let me copy that from my notepad. So the new workspace is going to be my Medallion architecture. So this way you're able to define. Like I said earlier, I don't expect this to work because of the security policy. So I just want to do it deliberately so that I demonstrate how that policy is going to work. But with the batch file that already existing, is going to always bypass that. So if I execute this now, this is not working. So what I need to do is that I need to first point it to the right path, and then I will just do cd, then the folder path where we have our files, and I will input that, and now I will just go back into my notepad as well, and then I will combine these two lines of code, both the one that is creating the architecture itself and then the security policy, so that it's bypass that scope. So let me just merge it together so that you can then use this one liner. You can use this one liner to execute and create your Medallion architecture. So I'll paste that in my PowerShell script now. Then I'll just hit enter, and then it will start creating my Medallion architecture. So let's give it a few seconds for the architecture to be created in our Fabric portal. Once this script is done running, then we'll check in our Fabric portal to see that the Medallion architecture is genuinely created. Now the script is done running. Let's go back into our Fabric portal and see if this workspace has been created and all the lakeouts that is expected to be in them. So I'm going to reload my Fabric environment now and see if the workspace is created within Fabric environment. I'm just going to click on workspaces and type the keyword Medallion. So, and voila, this is our Medallion architecture created with the name of the workspace predefined. And in that, we are also going to find all the three layers of the Medallion architecture: the bronze, the silver, and also the gold layer. So this is how to work with Fabric CLI to create Medallion architecture. I believe now you have a perfect understanding of what Fabric CLI is and why you should care about Fabric CLI. See you in the next video. Thank you.